Ah, Italians. Known for their good food, their beautiful women, their grand hand gestures, fascism, and some of Hollywood's biggest classics ever made. So in one of my comments suggested I watch the 1966 Italian comedy La Marta Brancaleone. I was very intrigued. Having studied film, Italian movies are mostly known for their melodrama, which made me curious what kind of funny bones an Italian skeleton would have. Now, since this is a comedy, it's hard to judge story, characters, visuals, and audio from a film critical perspective, since a comedy's purpose at the end of the day is still to make you laugh. I have to ask the question, is this movie funny? Hell yes, and I'll get to why right now. So the story takes place in the Middle Ages, with knights and kings and queens and all of that nonsense. And we start the movie off surprisingly lighthearted, and then it goes from lighthearted to absolutely savage. We see this village get completely raided. There's honestly very gratuitous violence being shown. There's a guy who, I don't think I can show this on YouTube, but he eats a chick alive. And once the village has been raided, a mysterious knight shows up, but he also gets murdered. And they steal his armor and one of the documents and try to sell it to a vendor. The document says that a knight will inherit an entire castle if he is able to ... So this is obviously trying to hint at something bad happening towards the end, but these guys don't care. All they see is a villa and wine for days. So the vendor and the two other guys team up to try and find a knight. And it just so happens that close by is a knight competition. And here we finally get to the main man himself, Brancaleone de Norcia. And the way they introduce Brancaleone and his horse is iconic. The moment the yellow horse shows up is when this movie starts getting funny. Let me tell you, this is when the movie kicks off. Now, Brancaleone wants to obviously take part in the tournament and at first refuses the vendor and the two gypsies of their offer. He then gets humiliated at the tournament, so he joins the gang, but he also declares himself the leader with his high authority and alpha male energy to go on an adventure to find the villa where they will hopefully settle down once they get there. The first hurdle on their journey is another knight named Teofilato de Leonzi. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, I'm very sorry. They both refuse to get out of each other's way, so they have a duel. A very long-lasting duel. And this is where was the first time I actually was laughing out loud. This was one of the funniest and lamest fight scenes at the same time. They have some very cool set pieces where they're cutting off a tree or they're literally mowing a hayfield, which I thought was an amazing visual gag. And this movie's full of visual gags, so we'll get to that more in detail. So both of the knights aren't able to kill each other, so they call a truce. And Teofilato tells Brancaleone about his heritage and that he is from a rich family which will give a great ransom if they offer him as a prisoner. Brancaleone refuses that offer and continues to go on his own journey. But Teofilato wants to follow him as he sees the potential of Brancaleone as the great leader of his group. So after Teofilato starts following them, they get to a city. The city seems to be empty, so they start robbing everything of value. But Brancaleone hears music coming from the streets. A woman playing guitar alone invites him into his house. He succumbs to her seduction until she reveals why she doesn't want to be doing it on the bed. It is where her husband died of the plague, aka the Black Death. This causes Brancaleone to have a complete freak out and tell the other guys that they have to leave immediately and that they are now infected with the curse of the pest. Teofilato knew about the outbreak in the city, which is why he didn't enter the city with the other guys. But in the most crazy fashion, all the guys that think they're now infected with the Black Death completely just overrun Teofilato to also make him part of the virus. Thinking of the doom that will succumb to them shortly but deadly nonetheless, they suddenly encounter a miracle. A Christian pilgrimage goes through the valley, and we see a very Jesus-like figure leading the group. Brancaleone tells him of the misfortunes that have happened to them, on which the priest immediately kisses him and says, "Follow me if you want to live." The band of comrades decides it is the only option for them to maybe potentially survive. So they abandon their plan of going to the villa and now follow the pilgrimage of this wise man. The first hurdle in their new adventure is a brittle bridge. While most of the comrades are able to cross the bridge, Pecoro, the older of the two gypsies, falls to his doom. Or so we are led to believe. The reason the first bridge collapses on Pecoro is not because of its poor structure and age. It's because the vendor is a Jew. So they have to baptize the vendor by almost drowning him, which is just that's. They then encounter their second hurdle. Another bridge that's old and brittle. But this time it is the pilgrimage leader himself who falls to his doom. Or so we're led to believe. And in the most unspectacular fashion, Brancaleone and his gang decide to split up with the other pilgrimers because, you know, they now have the villa still as their goal. And therefore they tell all the other guys to split up, go their each paths, but they still, you know, go their own path. On their way to a villa, they meet Matela, a damsel in distress who Brancaleone so heroically saves. Matela is saved, but her guardian is in dire condition. With his dying breath, he tells Brancaleone to, under any circumstances, bring her to her rightful husband, and to, under any circumstances, protect her purity. But Matela is horny, and she tries everything to convince Brancaleone to try and get with her. Brancaleone is caught in a moral dilemma, but he remains strong and loyal to his oath as a knight. No! The night before they arrive at their destination, Matela has a dialogue with Teofilato. She tells him that she does not want to marry the man who was arranged to be her husband. She tells Teofilato that she does not want to be pure when she arrives at the castle. And then we cut to the next day. Suspicious. So they arrive at the castle and are also invited to the wedding ceremony. Teofilato keeps telling Brancaleone that they need to leave. And after the wedding pair retire from the ceremony, Brancaleone wants to let out all of his sexual frustration on this one woman. But then he gets interrupted by the husband of the woman realizing that the woman has been impurified. Is that even a word? Matela then reveals to everyone that it was Brancaleone who had taken her innocence. Our hero, shocked by this revelation and these lies, because we as the viewers know that Brancaleone was the one to protect her purity and to not succumb to the seduction of this mad demon woman. The king lets his band of brothers get away with their lives, but Brancaleone is now captured like a bird in a cage, which is surprisingly placed outside the castle where there's no guards. So the gang saves him. That was easy. But they still need to be able to open the cage. So while the other guys are looking for a blacksmith, Brancaleone and Teofilato have a discussion about Matela. Teofilato tells him that she isn't worth it, that she was just a dumb bitch. But Brancaleone sees this as an insult to the woman who confessed her love to him. Meanwhile, they find the blacksmith, who's about to kill himself. Oh no! But they manage to save him, and he also manages to break the locks on the cage, just for Brancaleone to find out that Matela is going to be put in prison forever. So he rushes back into the castle to save her, only to find out she's now devoted herself to God. Brancaleone, enraged, wants to slash her head for the wrong she has done to him, but eventually, destiny denies him. So he goes back to his group of friends to finally go back to the main quest of finding the villa. But Teofilato tells him, hey, actually, I kind of live close to here, so we can kind of do the whole me being your prisoner idea again, so why don't we just kind of do that? And they all agree because, you know, money and stuff. So they're now at Teofilato's family castle, where they hold him captive. And Brancaleone, still sexually frustrated and, I think, traumatized, finally sees another woman who wants to have sex with him. Yeah, women characters in this movie aren't really that deep. It turns out that Teofilato's aunt is a sadomaso queen. So they start whipping each other in a very sexual way. But Brancaleone does not enjoy it at all, while she is absolutely ecstatic about it. Meanwhile, during the negotiations for Teofilato, the vendor suggests they give him 3,000 gold coins so that they free their captor. Captee? Captor? Wait. No, they're the captor. He's the captee. The captured? Man, English is tough. But the father completely refuses to do so, saying that Teofilato was a bastard anyway and that they actually didn't care about him at all. So that plan completely fails and they have to now leave the castle before they get absolutely stung by poisonous arrows. With nothing else left, there's only one thing that is on everyone's minds. Get to the castle and live a good life. You tried all the other things, let's get back to the main quest. Before they get to the castle, the vendor is not feeling too good. And I think this is one of the strongest scenes, is when you finally see the whole group be a group and sort of help the vendor who is about to die. Spoilers. These guys give him sayings that are really deep and just so right for the time that this plays in. I think this is the strongest scene in the movie if we're talking outside of comedic effect. I think a lot of comedies need to have a scene like this where it takes itself serious and has a bit of moments of clarity and depth. It's beautifully written, the dialogue is amazing. It felt heartwarming, even though it was a sad moment, to see these characters and how their friendship and relationship has developed throughout the movie. Even though you don't see it too much, you can tell because there's a lot of time that passes in this movie that you're not seeing what happens with these characters and what they do, which I wish there was more of in this story. I wish there was more focus on the group, but that scene was very good nonetheless. And this is where I'm actually gonna stop talking about the story, because I want you guys to watch this movie and find out what happens in the end, because the ending is so convoluted, full of so many twists, and one of the funniest sequences in the movie, which is both so funny and anticlimactic based on what happens previously in the movie with a lot of the stunt work and so on and so forth. One thing I will give away though is that one of the gypsies that died comes back and he kind of fell in love with a bear, and then he kind of leaves the bear and the bear's all sad. That was probably the worst joke in the entire movie, but hey, it's part of the story and I kind of wanted to tell you that because it just shows how random the movie is. It's obviously not the greatest story, it's a comedy. They like to keep it a simple story with some elements of side stories being kind of the main focus. Everything randomly happens, all the encounters are random. I think the story is funny, and the story is meant to be funny, so they did that right. Now let's move on to the characters. Obviously, there's one character that stands out above everything else in this movie, and that is Brancaleone da Norcia. Vittorio Gassman, the actor who plays him, does an excellent job of portraying this character. This completely cocky, confident buffoon who at the same time has the virtue, the loyalty, and the leadership that you so buy from him. Vittorio Gassman does an amazing job at some of the stunt work and practical humor in this movie, because that's what this movie is mostly based on, is practical humor. A lot of it is physical comedy with him, but his deliveries, I loved him. He was hilarious, everything on point, great comedic acting. And this is something that people don't really think about when talking about acting. Comedic acting is incredibly difficult because of the exaggeration and the timing that is needed to be comedic. So big shout out to this performance. Now to the other gang characters, I don't think there was too much that was done. The vendor was a bit fleshed out. There was obviously some racist jokes because of the fact that he was Jewish. They made him very greedy, very stingy with money. I don't really think about racism when it comes to that. I just think, okay, it's just funny, he's just greedy. I think the Jew joke was more from the religious side of things rather than the greedy side of things. Obviously, there was definitely racism based on the jokes of him being greedy. I'm not gonna deny that. Also, the fact that he always carries around this stupid box was just kind of hilarious in its own because of how stupidly inconvenient the box looks. It just does not look like something you would be dragging halfway across the country. The two gypsies, they don't really get that much. I guess one of the guys gets a little moment with the bear, but that wasn't even that funny to me. The scenes without Brancaleone where they try to be funny, they aren't really that funny. That's kind of a letdown about this movie, is that every scene where Brancaleone is not on screen, the movie slows down a lot when it comes to the humor. Then we also have Teofilato. I thought Teofilato was a very intriguing character, very interesting sort of bad guy persona, but at the same time, he kind of has the right intentions and he stays loyal to the group as well. He's a bit of a scumbag, and even when he's with his parents literally just tell him he's a scoundrel and that they don't care about him. And now, while what he did to Matilda was wrong, it was consensual, and the movie does make that very clear that Matilda did want to lose her innocence before arriving at her husband's castle. Speaking of Matilda, I thought Matilda was a short but impactful part of the movie. I think she's like there for like a sixth of the movie, and she just has such a commanding presence in the movie that you really do buy her being this sought-after woman that wants to rebel against, you know, the patriarchy and whatnot. Another character which I absolutely adore is the priest. This guy was absolutely hilarious in his line delivery. I think him and Brancaleone were such a great compliment to each other when they were together. Genuinely, the whole pilgrimage scenes were part of the movie where Brancaleone didn't have to carry the humor of the movie. It was kind of the moments where, you know, the other guy gets to shine with his humor and comedic timing. I thought he was fantastic in the movie. Very, very funny performance. And last but not least, there's a character I didn't mention that much during the story portions, and that is the horse, Aquilante. The horse Aquilante, I do see as a character, and I do think that he actually has an arc as well, which I thought was hilarious. But most importantly, he's freaking dyed in yellow. What the hell did they do? That's the first time I laughed in the movie. When I saw the stupid horse, I was like, what? The horse gets a lot of abuse in the movie. Like, I don't think this could, you know, go through if it were made today. Brancaleone punches the horse because the horse just wouldn't obey to anything that he says. And it's also part of some of the funniest moments in the movie. Alright, so let's talk about the visuals. There is some really good cinematography here. And then there's also parts that are, you know, because of the technology that existed in 1966, that look a bit out of touch, so to say. You know, out of focus, underlit. I think I had a bigger impression on the good shots than I did on the bad shots. When I had a bad shot, I was like, oh, okay, whatever. It's like, it's not gonna be there forever. When it was a good shot, I was like, oh, that's a really good looking shot. When I think about the cinematography in this movie, I don't really think about the shot composition. I think about the things that are happening on screen, because there's a lot of crazy things that are happening on screen. And I gotta give big credit to the stunt work of this movie. There are some hilarious stunts. Some of the funniest scenes in the movies are just straight up stunt work that look so funny and are timed really well. And the visual comedy in this movie really works because of a lot of the stunt work and some of the cinematography that really tells a joke without saying a joke. And I think that's very important in a lot of comedy movies, to have visual gags that the audience wouldn't get if they weren't watching the movie right in front of them. And I have to also give major credit to the costume designs. Some of these are just completely absurd and they just look so silly, and I love it. I thought a lot of times when people took off their clothes, it looked so awkward, and it was meant to look odd. You could tell that the intention was that these people have to look incredibly stupid, otherwise the joke doesn't work. And the production design really adds to the extra layer of just a good visual presentation. Last but not least, we have the audio. So should I start with the good or the bad? Let's start with the bad and then get to the good. Because most of this movie, if not all of it, is ADR. And you could tell. It's pretty obvious. It's blatantly obvious. I'll show you a clip and you can just, tell for yourself. And yes, at the start of the movie, that's very prevalent because there's a lot of dialogue, but the further the movie goes, the less is actually being said on screen. A lot of it is actually happening off screen or action sequences where you're already so focused on all the nonsense that is happening that you don't really care about whether the audio doesn't match the lips. But I do have to point out that it is very ADR. Pretty much every line of dialogue was recorded after they filmed this movie. As for the music, I freaking love the main theme of the song because it's just a hymn for Brancaleone. I mean, the movie starts with and it ends with, and a few times across the middle it's sprinkled across with a little. It's very rare that I want a song to happen in a movie. When this movie ended, I was begging for it to come because of how just catchy and funny the theme song is. The rest of the music isn't too outstanding. I didn't really get any of it. It's mostly just a recomposition of the main theme. Yeah, I guess it's okay, and sometimes it has the classic 60s one note that goes through for a while and another note that goes through for like the dramatic scenes. But that's just a sign of the time, so I guess I will still not see it as a positive mostly, but goddamn, Brancaleone is just, that's a banger. Okay, so now that I covered all the main aspects, let's talk about overall movie experience. The first 10 minutes is not funny, then Brancaleone comes and then it's very funny for an hour easily. Then it slows down a little bit because of all the side stuff that happens, and then it gets good again with the ending where just complete chaos ensues. Also, with these old movies, there's a lot of shots of just walking, classic walking. It does get a little, slow at times when it comes to certain walking sequences where they want to, show him walk the entire way, and they kind of filled it with time. The movie could have been shorter. I think if this movie is 20 minutes shorter or 10 minutes shorter, I think it might actually be a masterpiece in my opinion. But there is a lot of scenes where I was like, okay, they have to now show us 20 seconds of him walking. They show us 10 seconds of him walking there. Oh, 10 seconds of this person walking this direction. Okay, I see. But overall, as a comedy, I think this movie definitely delivers on what it's supposed to deliver, and that's being funny. And I just gotta say, man, they don't make movies like this anymore. I don't even want to talk about the sexualization of the women, which, you can't really have these days in movies. Also, the slight racism. But if I were to rate this movie, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. It's closer to an 8. It's just the things that bothered me a little too much. I still had a great time watching this movie. I laughed a lot, but I'm a very easy person to make laugh, so don't think that this movie is for everyone. But don't get me wrong, this is overall a very, very solid movie with great humor and an outstanding comedic performance by the main character. Alright, and that was the review for La Marta Brancaleone. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any movies that you grew up with or are iconic in your European country, leave them down in the comments below. I do want to check out as many as I can and give reviews to them to all of Europe and America to see the potential of the European cinema, or the history of the European cinema in this case. Now, as for the video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like. Subscribe for more movie reviews, and I'll see you soon.